Another year, another Star Wars special. Now, what exactly do I cover for this one? No. Wait, was this here before?
The heck is this thing? I don't even know if it actually works or not. Maybe I can pawn it off for a couple bucks on eBay or something.
Steffi? What are you doing on this?
I guess that means it's working then. Alright. Wait, you also have one of these things, Jack?
Strangely, yes. I was just digging through all the ideas I came up with for Star Wars videos, and then suddenly this thing got here. Don't know how, but what I'm curious of now is how did you get one?
Internet?
No, I have a feeling that if I go further, it's going to lead to something more questionable. So, does this logically mean you're joining me for this one?
Yeah, might as well. Currently, I'm just relaxing in some desert crap hole for my own leisure, and I'm totally not trying to evade capture from the Empire. I got some time to kill.
Well, if that's anything to go by, that place is going to be burned down within the next couple minutes, so we better find a safer place to do this. Probably a cantina of sorts.
Okay.
You know, I think I can vibe with this. Got some lovely people here.
Yeah, Oscar.
So, you figure out any ideas yet?
Well, while I was on my way here, I actually got a few recommendations for the Jedi Archives, one of which was apparently the fact that LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga finally came out.
Oh yeah, I've been playing that last one a fair bit. I'd be down for that.
Wait a minute. It finally came out?!
Yeah? Have you been frozen in carbonite the past few weeks?
So step on up to the place. Need to face what can spill into the light of us. Step on up to the place. 'Cause this ain't no game. It's time to make history, yeah.
Oh man, it still feels surreal knowing that this game finally came out, and it was only announced back at E3 2019. I feel like we've all been frozen in carbonite just waiting for this game.
That initial reveal sure was something, let me tell ya. An all-new LEGO Star Wars that covered all 9 films, with brand new adaptations of the older films and adapting the newer films for the very first time. That alone got me hyped, and I only got more excited with everything else they revealed.
As someone who fell off the LEGO game bandwagon quite a while ago, even I got excited for this, helped up by the fact that it was announced before Rise of Skywalker even came out. But then the following year happened, and development for the game got crazy.
The basic gist of it was that for the longest time, we were only given vague hints about when the game might come out, which were also set back to later dates thanks to the numerous delays this game got. You can thank COVID for a lot of that. It was difficult to tell when this game would even be released until they finally confirmed that it would come out on April 5th this year.
We get the pandemic threw a giant monkey wrench into basically everything, but this felt like an especially bad case when it comes to games, and the amount of time there was between trailers and info releases was not helping. But I am totally relieved that the game has been properly finished and released to the public, so that we can all admire Grievous's dancing skills.
The image of General Grievous dabbing is not something that I ever expected we'd get, but man, that's a moment of pure magic.
Indeed. So, this is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Why?
Oh, I don't really, I just wanted to shoehorn that quote into this video for no reason at all.
Well, to be fair, I think we used that quote better than Attack of the Clones.
Anyways, I believe now's a good time to dive right into this game. Jack, what are you thinking about?
Well, since this game is basically an adaptation of 9 separate films, meaning talking about the story means we are essentially talking about the plots of all those films in one swoop, I need to figure out a way to sum them all up.
Good point. Wanna just do a seconds-long half-hearted summary of each movie?
Huh, not a bad idea. So with that said, here's the story of every Star Wars film in under a minute. Go! Phantom Menace. Planet is taken over, get help to get the planet back, also something raised in the desert.
Attack of the Clones. Some jerk is trying to assassinate Padme. Apparently the ones behind her are Boba Fett's dad and Christopher Lee, rest in peace. Also, Anakin doesn't like sand.
Revenge of the Sith.
You ever hear of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Vandalize the Jedi Temple with crayons.
A New Hope. Kid escapes crappy home life on the desert planet and blows up the big scary space ball.
The Empire Strikes Back. Luke searches his feelings because he knows something is true. And that something is that there is a literal Easter egg on Hoth.
Return of the Jedi. The big scary Empire suffers an embarrassing defeat at the hands of cute little teddy bears.
The Force Awakens! It's a New Hope. Also, the Stormtrooper did more than Captain Phasma.
The Last Jedi. Luke is suffering from the Big Grumpy, and this causes Rey to throw herself into danger.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
That. There. Now you're ready to start watching the Disney Plus shows.
Skywalker Saga, like past LEGO games, is essentially a retelling of all the films it's adapting, though heavily abridged and with the more serious and dramatic moments from each movie being substituted with silly comedic moments. For the most part, the jokes all work really well, and the way they rework a lot of iconic lines into more humorous situations is really clever.
What I find really impressive about this is despite each episode only having 5 levels, they use them and the world to essentially tell the same story in an easy to understand way. Whatever isn't covered in a level is left to be cutscenes in one of the game's hub worlds, and while they don't recreate every single moment, like there's nothing covering midi-chlorians here, and the shootout during the escape from the Death Star in episode 4 isn't here, what it does cover is just enough to say what the original story was about. For example, the first level in The Phantom Menace is in Naboo's planet Core, which is quite a ways into the first act of the movie, but they use the hub worlds to cover the opening negotiations and meeting Jar Jar. Or in A New Hope, where they don't use any levels to cover what happens on Tatooine except the getaway. There's plenty more examples I can list.
One thing I really appreciate about Skywalker Saga compared to the older games is that they don't cut out nearly as much of the story from the films, especially the prequels. The older games didn't even acknowledge that the Separatists existed, despite how big a role they played throughout the entire trilogy. They also have you play through Attack of the Clones opening for the first time, instead of just dropping you on Kamino like in the very first LEGO Star Wars, or the second assassination attempt like in Complete Saga.
Heck, they even covered Mace's duel with Palpatine in a cutscene, and even made a boss fight for Yoda's duel against him, which is really neat. Now that I think about it, the amount of representation these games did for the prequels really improved over time, didn't it?
If you frequently indulge in the gigantic meme culture surrounding these films like I do, Skywalker Saga's got you covered. It's very self-referential about a lot of the common memes and in-jokes throughout the whole saga, which really works for a game like this that's just endless goofy fan service everywhere you look.
I found it pretty inventive how some of the memes were used in terms of writing. Like in the level where you chase down the assassin in episode 2, I enjoyed solely because of the fact that if you hurt innocent bystanders, Obi-Wan completely berates you, with my favorite one being this.
Has your brain turned into sand, Anakin? Stop firing at the civilians!
Personally, I found it pretty amusing how the sequel levels portrayed Kylo Ren, having him just be a complete fanboy of Darth Vader, going as far as geeking out over how he and Rey are the grandchildren of Vader and Palpatine during their duel in Rise of Skywalker. And also how they take the shirtless Ben Swolo meme from The Last Jedi and run with it even further. At times though, I do feel like the main story rushes through the films a bit too quickly, and it can feel kinda jarring seeing most of the main story beats zoom on by. I understand it's supposed to be heavily abridged, and to be fair, they're adapting 9 entire films, so it's easy to forgive with that in mind. But at some points, I would have preferred if this game just slowed down for a bit, especially in episode 6. The entire second Death Star assault was just a brief cutscene, and you weren't even allowed to play anything from it.
Granted, I am not 100% sure what one's reaction will be if they are not a fan of Star Wars. The best I can see is them finding a lot of this funny due to how much it doesn't take anything seriously. But as longtime Star Wars fans ourselves, especially ones who enjoy seeing other people show their appreciation and love towards the franchise by giving their own takes on a particular lore, or just by goofing off in this case, this was delightful to see.
I understand that a few of the actual films are pretty polarizing among fans, and some movies are definitely favored more than others are, but if you're a fan of Star Wars overall, it's hard not to appreciate how faithful and detailed this game is with every film in the franchise. Personally, I don't really like Attack of the Clones or Rise of Skywalker, but my opinions on the films don't really affect how much I enjoy playing through either of them.
If a LEGO game is adapting a movie series into another format, it usually tries to focus on making you feel like you're actually in that particular world that you could theoretically recreate with actual LEGO sets.
Well, maybe. If you somehow had enough money to buy each individual LEGO set, many of which cost up to hundreds of US dollars, and had the ability to fly out to some desert or tundra or jungle, or take a trip to Vegas while lugging around all those LEGO sets and figures wherever you go,
Considering it'd be a chore to take them around, especially when they're built, you're not exactly wrong. But the fact of the matter is, Skywalker Saga definitely continues this trend. While not everything is made out of Legos, everything looks as part of the same world as each other, and the details of each environment manage to perfectly replicate each planet. And no matter the shading or coloration, everything looks really colorful and feels incredibly vibrant.
It amazes me how far the minifigures designs and models have come since the PS2 days. I still remember when they used to be these plain, rough-looking models. Comparing that to Skywalker Saga really shows how far tech has come to allow Traveler's Tales to effectively replicate the glossy sheen of actual LEGO figures. Also, the designs themselves have been much improved from the older games, as well as the animations. They all capture the personality, likeness, and mannerisms of each character pretty flawlessly. For LEGO figures that have more traditional 3D animation, as opposed to the stop-motion animation you'd see in stuff like any of the LEGO movies, it all looks fantastic.
I'll also give a ton of credit that a lot of the models for the ships look like they were made using actual LEGO creations that will require a lot more pieces than previously. Like, look at that Star Destroyer! That thing looks like it was made with a set that cost well over $700. Granted, there are a few instances where they do use miniature models for a few cutscenes, but it's the effort that counts. Now, Steffi, I don't know about you, but I'm happy to report that on PS5, no matter what, the game ran wonderfully. It runs at 60 frames per second at all times, with barely any dips, even in split-screen co-op. And with a small handful of exceptions, there were barely any load times. You can even tinker with the graphics to suit where it looks nicest to you, like turning things like motion blur and camera shaking off, which I really appreciate.
I personally went for the PC version of this game, and for the most part, it also performs pretty well. Adjustments are available for resolution and frame rate, shadow quality, anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, reflections, etc. Whether or not any of that impacts performance for you will all depend on how good your PC is. My PC meets both the minimum and recommended requirements, and I was able to run this game with the highest settings without any issues. I did experience a pretty notable performance dip in the Droid Factory level though.
I'll take that as a sign that the game, about 98% of the time, is perfectly stable across all available platforms. Except the Switch. Now, granted, from what I can gather, the Switch version looks and runs totally fine, but you could tell they had to compromise a few things by making it look worse visually and capping the frame rate at 30 frames. There are a few dips, but not a ton, and there's texture pop-up at times.
Based on what I've heard regarding the Switch port, if it's your only real option, or if you just want to take the game with you on the go, it'll do fine, but don't expect it to be the best compared to other versions. One thing to briefly mention is the soundtrack. Of course, it's all just the music from the films, which by default makes it great, but it also works well in the levels it's used for. I did find it a bit weird in Return of the Jedi that the somber rendition of Imperial March that plays at Vader's redemption and death is used for the level where Chewbacca and Wicket the Ewok are going on their Imperial Walker rampage. It's laughably out of place, but that's really the only thing that stuck out.
Luke, please. What if our Max is hijacked by teddy bears and a walking carpet? Aren't you sad?
Skywalker Saga has a pretty extensive voice cast, and all of them do a pretty good job. Personal standouts to me were the Clone Wars cast, who all returned to reprise their past roles. It's always a joy to hear James Arnold Taylor as Obi-Wan, Matt Lanter as Anakin, D. Bradley Baker as Jango Fett in The Clones, Corey Burton as Dooku, Sam Witwer as Darth Maul and Palpatine, T.C. Carson as Mace Windu. Heck, they even got Phil Lamar to play Jar Jar Binks, Bail Organa, and Kit Fisto again. Can't go without mentioning, this game is confirmed to be the last role that Tom Kane took on before retirement. It's unfortunate to hear this be the case, especially given the circumstances surrounding his retirement, though it was nice getting to hear him play Yoda and Akbar one more time, as well as Qui-Gon Jinn. It was overall a nice way for such a legendary voice talent to cap off his career.
Personally, I'm a little mixed on Fred Tatascios' performance as Darth Vader, as the tone doesn't sound 100% right, but there are some comedic lines he does pretty well, and he can genuinely sound like Vader at times.
Whoa, that's a cool suit. Where can I get one of those?
Patience, child. Patience.
I'm gonna tell him.
Aw, but that'd spoil the surprise.
There's a couple of actors from the movies that I'm very happy to see return, like Billy D. Williams as Lando and Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, but one casting choice from the movies that caught me off guard was Daniel Logan as Boba Fett. Yes, the actor is the kid who played him in Attack of the Clones. I'm kinda surprised they didn't get D. Bradley Baker to voice him like they did for Django, but you know what? This is cool. I'm willing to bet he was happy to voice the character again.
While the major bulk of the original cast didn't return, which in some cases can't really be helped since Alec Guinness and Carrie Fisher are sadly no longer alive, the cast brought on board to play their characters also do a fantastic job. AJ Locascio as Han Solo and Steven Stanton as Old Ben are pretty notable standouts. Most of the cast are kinda doing their own thing with the characters, and it works really well. And hey, if you want something similar to the older LEGO games before they had voice acting, Skywalker Saga has a mumble mode you can toggle on and off, which is really cool.
While the mumble mode is really funny in cutscenes, they also do it in normal gameplay, which did get a bit old after a while, and it is why I personally prefer to have the voice acting. Besides, they even put brief exchanges between certain character pairs in there, most of which are pretty hilarious.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees? Oh, sorry. I'm sure you're already well aware.
I feel ya, Chewie. I feel ya.
That is definitely a mood right there. Most of the things that aren't great about the presentation are pretty negligible when compared to what it gets right, except for one thing. The game may not be distracting visually, but there are some glitches. There were several times in vehicle battles where some opponents in Episode 2 just clipped through solid objects. There was this spot in Episode 2 where things like some bonus objectives and the health bar of this meteor had failed to load, and my attempt to progress to the next area softlocked the game. I found another softlock in Episode 6 that can be pretty easy to trigger even if you're not trying to, and during the Battle of Hoth, my brother found a way to glitch out of bounds under the earth and continue flying. We were laughing pretty hard at that last one. The game is not an unstable mess when it comes to glitches, but the fact that I ran into some out of my control is definitely an issue.
I didn't really experience anything too major with glitches, but there were a few hiccups. A couple cutscenes started playing without any picture, certain audio quit working, one time my game just crashed outright. There was a fairly large patch for the PC version shortly after launch, and I think that helped some, but still keep an eye out. I've dealt with worse in other LEGO games like Marvel Superheroes and Force Awakens. It's at least a little bit better here. Other than that, this game's pretty strong on the presentation side of things.
Yeah, despite the issues I came across, I definitely do commend the amount of effort that went into the game's presentation, and it overall looks and sounds great enough so the flaws don't override the good stuff.
Kind of a weird choice to use the word override there.
Well, considering there aren't too many glaring flaws aside from the glitches, the stuff that's great is able to stick out more. Like a bantha. Yes? Maybe not. Want to move on to gameplay?
Right by you on that one.
At base level, Skywalker Saga doesn't sound that much different from other LEGO games. You've got at least 2 characters on you at all times, and you have various open worlds where you can explore and find collectibles, and said open worlds are your gateway to story content, levels, and mini challenges. However, it's exactly how it decides to build the core gameplay around this, where it begins to feel fresh and new.
One thing I'll say is that Skywalker Saga got a lot more insane with melee combat than I or probably anyone else expected it to. Melee fighting is heavily built around different types of attacks and whatever combos you can build off of those attacks. You have a standard ground attack assigned to one button, an aerial-based attack that lets you juggle enemies assigned to the jump button, a strong attack that doubles as a standalone ground pound, and you can even counter an enemy in the middle of an attack. The game pushes you to play around with and mix up whatever melee attacks you use, since enemies will start blocking if you just spam one standard attack over and over. Also, having combos go on for as long as you can will net you a stud bonus. Seeing what some of these characters are able to do is absolutely wild, especially in those videos where people use young Anakin as a combat test dummy. Gun combat's also been notably reworked as well, with it now being a more traditional over-the-shoulder third-person system. Jedi also sort of have this feature with being able to throw lightsabers, though you'll be using this aiming more often for the ranged characters. Altogether, it's a pretty fun combat system, even if the only real consequence for dying is dropping a few studs. Also, Grievous is by far the most busted character in this game, and I freaking love it.
We all do, Steph. So, you know how I said it's a bit better to separate each character in Complete Saga into class types when thinking about playstyles? Well, as it turns out, that's exactly how they're handled here. I always found the Jedi and the Sith to be the most fun to play as, since lightsaber combat can be so fun, but I do appreciate how the villain characters get thermal detonators to blow up silver objects that they totally stole from bounty hunters, by the way. Bounty hunters are naturally more skilled for gun combat, smugglers have this bullet time that they can pull off only on specific triggers, kind of wish they could do that in combat, among some other things, but one thing I love about the hero class is that they can actually steal armor off of enemies. Stealing a complete set from one actually nets you the perks of villain characters, which is amazing. It's fun to have 2 class perks at once, and it's actually needed if you want some goodies without access to the full roster.
Skywalker Saga has a pretty massive roster of characters to choose from. A good chunk are regulated to an extra category separate from the main classes, and while they're mostly just fluff for the roster, they're still pretty fun to play around with. Also, the Protocol and Astro Droid characters can all actually throw hands in a fight, which is very amusing. I don't think most people would ever recover from being headbutted by R2-D2. That, and if I ever saw C-3PO angry enough to fight, I'd be getting out of there at light speed.
It always feels good to control certain characters you're a fan of from the movies, and place them on any planet featured in them, because the worlds are what the devs want you to spend the most time on. Coruscant, Tatooine, Mustafar, Endor, Exegol, they're all here, and they're huge. They did a great job replicating the overall atmosphere and structure of them all, and there is plenty to do wherever you go. Studs are the most common and important collectible around here, but there's also Kyber bricks, which can net you upgrades for every character, like more health, making the search for Kyber bricks and returning mini-kits easier, to attracting studs from farther away, among other things. And data cards, which unlock extras like stud multipliers and cosmetic changes. I'd recommend going for the first 2 stud multipliers as soon as you can, because they will make getting a lot of this content way easier. There's some stuff in this game that goes for ridiculous prices, so with them, you can essentially be like, my studs have octupled since the last time we met, Viceroy.
Good, 8 times the studs, 8 times the fall.
Now, levels are still here, replicating particular scenes from their respective films as usual, but they took a different approach to them, which both of us really appreciate. Most levels barely go over 10 minutes, and while you cannot get every single collectible on your first attempt, it won't take that much time to get to the area you need to go to in order to collect what you missed, and you can even back out of the level once you have what you need, as it does save the collectibles you got. You are guaranteed just 1 Kyber brick just by being in the level, but you get the rest by getting True Jedi, which has 3 tiers and gives you 3 bricks, though it will give you 1 or 2 if the amount is satisfactory, 1 by getting all the mini kits, and 1 by doing the challenges. I'm cool with this setup, and it is fun to look for everything, but I do think the challenges could have been better implemented. While I enjoy using my noggin to put the clues together, my problem is that they don't give you the title of each challenge until after you finish the level, or if you beat just one of them, usually while not even trying. And if you do the former, they still won't tell you what exactly you need to do unless you buy the description with studs. Granted, the amount you need becomes chump change if you get the multipliers going, and you can reduce that cost with select methods, but you'd rather save those for extra bits of content. It's not an absolute pace breaker, especially if you don't care about getting everything, but the unnecessariness of leaving the player that much in the dark does feel like padding.
On occasion, trying to get enough studs for a true Jedi can be a bit of a hassle, as several times I found myself paranoid or clenching my teeth over whether I'd be able to collect enough studs to earn that full bonus. Granted, that's only a factor without the stud multipliers, and with them, these challenges are pretty much effortless, but still. Levels reenact major scenes from the films, and all consist of 3 main archetypes. There's the main levels that are the typical LEGO exploration and combat stuff, the vehicle stages where you get to control either a land-based vehicle or starship and fly around blowing stuff up, and boss fights where you take on one of the main villains from the films. A good bulk of these bosses are against all the Sith characters like Maul, Dooku, Vader, Palpatine, and Kylo Ren, and these are probably my favorite of the main levels throughout the game. It's a blast going all in with comboing these guys with your lightsaber, even if, again, you can't exactly die. And all the in-between stuff is pretty creative with finding ways to stretch out these boss encounters into actual levels. There are some pretty obvious liberties taken with some of the boss battles to make it so you always have 2 playable characters, even if that wasn't how it went in the original films.
What's that? Anakin and Yoda get to team up on Dooku together? Sweet! This is cool! And it's neat knowing that this means Anakin won't lose his hand. Oh.
There's plenty of other bosses against the non-Sith villains as well. General Grievous, Jango and Boba Fett, Captain Phasma, the Praetorian Guards, and the Knights of Ren are pretty noteworthy examples. And then there's stuff you'd never think they'd make it to a boss fight, such as that one trash compactor alien from A New Hope and BB-9E. He takes control of a giant turret and starts unloading everything onto you. Definitely points for creativity there.
The game also has a healthy amount of vehicle sections, some of which have you on rails, and you only need to worry about getting to the end and maybe shooting things up. But a select number of them, like the second section of the assault on the first Death Star, the Falcon escape to the asteroid field, and the fight with Jango out in space Geonosis, you do get to control a starfighter freely. The blaster accuracy can be a little bit better, assuming you have minimalist help from the aim assistance, which you can freely adjust in the settings menu, and I'm not fond of the somersaults and U-turns being mapped to the same button combo, but the space vehicles as a whole control really well, and playing them decently will net you proton torpedoes, which are homing projectiles. But you can easily appreciate them outside of levels, as the game does allow you to fly around with them in the vicinity of all the planets. It's really fun to find space battles with these things, but there's also bounty hunters for you to shoot down, mini challenges that test your flying capabilities that can get you a character should you get gold on them, and if you look hard enough, you can find entire cruisers that you can fight and commandeer for yourself, and essentially gain a new hub world. Steffi, are we playing a new Star Wars Battlefront game?
Given that this game had actual content at release, and didn't launch with a predatory loot box system that blew up in the entire AAA industry's face, I don't think so. Speaking of Battlefront, visiting the archives in the Jedi Temple gives me very traumatic flashbacks to Operation Nightfall from the original Battlefront 2.
We will never forget the pain those bookcases inflicted on us. By the way, good to know that this place seems to be doing okay, even after all the Jedi basically died.
I think now would probably be a good time to transition over to the open-ended part of the game, where you're able to run around nearly every recognizable planet and location throughout the films. During story and free play mode, you have complete freedom to explore all these locations outside of the main missions, and complete various challenges and side quests to earn Kyber bricks, and unlock even more characters to play as. The amount of content in this part of the game well surpasses that of the main missions, and the major bulk of your free time will be in these parts. Honestly, I feel like this is where the fun in Skywalker Saga really begins, especially when you go into free play mode. Running around so many beautiful, iconic locations, and picking whatever character you want to control on the fly is just the greatest thing to experience as a fan of the franchise. You can even travel to different parts of some of the planets like Coruscant, Tatooine, and Naboo. They all feel about as fully realized as they possibly could be.
It also helps that the amount of puzzles they hold are way more than just use one ability a certain class type has and boom, although there are a select number of ones that are exactly like that, which are fine. But then there are some that require more thought and observation, and a lot of times when you start catching on to what the game wants you to do, it feels like acing a final exam sometimes. And then there's some actual platforming challenges that show you a few things certain class types can do, like how Jedi and Scavengers can run on walls all Jedi Fallen Order style. There's even plenty of side quests that take you to different planets across the galaxy and reward you with either more Kyber breaks or even more characters to get, some of which being fetch quests which can be fun, and some of which lead to minor bosses like a thief controlling an ATST or a crate dragon? Am I playing Monster Hunter?
Collecting Kyber bricks also allows you to purchase character upgrades, assuming you have enough bricks and studs. There's the core upgrades that let you increase general stuff like health, attack power, and speed, as well as staff-specific upgrade trees that give classes minor buffs and additional gameplay attributes. These are largely optional, but a fun extra incentive for collecting extra Kyber bricks other than checking off a box. And it thankfully doesn't gate off progression until you meet a certain quota like some games do. Looking at you, Sonic Unleashed. Kinda blows that the Scavenger class doesn't get any of its main abilities until you play either Return of the Jedi or The Force Awakens. There's no real reason for this, and it just puts a needless cap on being able to obtain a good chunk of bricks without the Net Launcher, Glider, or Breaker Blaster, until you either get to the final parts of the original trilogy, or you start off with the sequel trilogy. I chose to tackle the movies in chronological order, and that was not fun to deal with.
As did I. Kyber bricks are definitely the most noble reward for going after everything in a level, but going after the mini-kits rewards you with microships that you can actually fly out into space, and in free-playing vehicle levels, which is a really good reward. Tell me this isn't really funny. It's a really good thing that the game is constantly finding ways to reward you for solving puzzles, side missions, or just free activities of the sorts, because the game in general is exploding with things to do and collect. Granted, you will need to revisit levels a few times in order to get everything they have to offer, and you might need to deal with some obtuse methods to fulfill a task, or go through hoops that in my opinion weren't exactly needed, but since they are the exception, I don't take much issue with it. What will be a point of contention is definitely the amount there is to collect. Even though most of the content is optional, there's literally over 1,100 Kyber bricks in this game and over 700 characters, and depending on what type of gamer you are, that can admittedly be really overwhelming. I mean, you don't need to replay anything with really strict instructions, so there's that, but if you ask me, while it is valid to play through every single episode and call it a day, there's going to be a lot in this game you'll be missing out on. I will say, this isn't a case of a game being fun to play through, but a nightmare to complete, but there's still quite a noticeable gap between the content you get by playing one way versus another way, and I do think you should at least keep that in consideration should you pick this game up.
If you got the Deluxe Edition, alongside the main content, you also get to play as a number of extra characters from other Star Wars media. The packs available at launch were for Mandalorian Season 1 and Solo. Trooper and Classic character packs were also available at launch for pre-orders, but were made available on the 19th for everyone else, along with the Rogue One pack being released that same day. Character packs for The Mandalorian Season 2 and The Bad Batch are expected to be released on May 4th. Coincidentally, the day this video is supposed to go live. It's some neat bonus content, and if you're fine with paying $10 extra, I'd say it's worth it. Bit of a shame they don't really have any unique lines or animations.
The lack of unique lines is especially bad for K2SO.
That is a bad idea.
I do really like how the game is acknowledging the spin-offs, and seeing the old minifigures in a modern game is charming, but I do think all of them deserve voice lines. Hopefully that can be patched in, along with maybe some characters who deserve to be in. Like, you put in clone captains with blue armor, and not one of them is Rex? Come on, he was right there! But I guess the only thing we have left to talk about now is the co-op. Yeah, I was actually able to get my brother in for a few play sessions, and I'm pleased to report that co-op makes the game even more fun. You can just mess with each other with all the game has in terms of combat, but both of you can go as far as you want as it is split screen, and the tests become easier to do when both of you cooperate. Not to mention, at least on PS5, the game is able to keep the frame rate consistent, which is amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, buddy. Playing this with you reminded me of those times where we played the older games together.
Just like the old days.
These games definitely came a long way with co-op compared to the older games locking you and your co-op partner on screen unable to move anywhere without the other person. All that's really missing now is online co-op. Playing this game with a friend from literally anywhere in the world would be amazing.
Yeah, it's a bummer that the game doesn't support online co-op. We were this close to greatness. But I can get over that because everything else about this game is immensely solid. I also feel like the gameplay got the upgrade it needed in order to be more captivating than a lot of the other LEGO games, and I really had a fun time with the combat and the exploration. Despite how much I went after before uploading this review, I didn't really feel that much burnout, which I'm happy to say coming off a previous review. Let that speak volumes for how much I enjoy myself while playing this.
I agree with just about all of that. Going through the main story and doing side content just doesn't get old for me. I still have a pretty hefty amount of stuff I haven't collected yet, but I can definitely see myself doing everything I can in this game, even if it takes a while. The wait for this game took a long time, but it was very much worth it.
Steffi, you took what I was gonna say right out of my mouth.
But that's physically impossible. You can't remove words from somebody's mouth.
But it is completely true. It was worth the wait. There are definitely a fair share of things to take issue with, like the gap between a playthrough of the normal episodes and completion being huge, various technical problems, and some improvements the DLC could have, but for everything that bugs me, the game gets about 10 other things right for me to say that it's really good. From the insanely fun combat to the enjoyable bosses, to blood-pumping moments in a vehicle, the game just hits home with me that I could put another 30 hours into it and not have a problem with it. And the added touches that both show love and poke fun at the franchise just act as nice little cherries on top. Like, seriously, you could tell me the game was written by people who care about the series and just run fan forums, and I'd buy it. I would totally recommend this if you love Star Wars, but I can also recommend it if you just want a nice fun game that doesn't ask a ton out of you. The game does cost $60, and if you want the deluxe edition, that'll cost you another $20. And while I do feel satisfied with getting the deluxe edition, if that's too much for you, that's understandable. Of course, I say that, and this game still has the best launch out of any LEGO game to date, so really, whenever you decide to get it, if at all, this game is absolutely one in a million.
This whole game just oozes love and appreciation for all of Star Wars out of every square inch, new and old. Don't expect anything that'll test your hardcore gamer skills. This is still a LEGO game, and I highly doubt Traveler's Tales will ever make LEGO Dark Souls or anything. But this game is just endlessly fun and charming. Whether you're an adult who grew up watching these films and playing the games, or you're getting it for your kid who's only just getting into Star Wars, this is a pretty easy recommendation to make for either demographic. I think after playing this game, I'd probably call it my new favorite of the LEGO games, a title which used to belong to LEGO Marvel Superheroes. Whether old or young, if you've ever enjoyed any of the LEGO games and are a fan of Star Wars, this game will make a fine addition to your collection.
Well, that was fun. We reviewed a game, your desert crap hole is probably been set ablaze, so... now what?
Wanna buy some death sticks?
Do they sell death sticks around here?
Let me check. Anyone sell death sticks around here?
Freeze!
Okay, now the Empire's on us.
Now I really do have a bad feeling about this.
You two are under arrest for assisting Joyce with highly vital information to escape the planet.
You'll be brought before the Emperor and judged for your treachery against the Empire.
Do you want to buy some death sticks?
Wait, Step, I just thought of something. You two will buy us some death sticks.
We will buy you some death sticks.
We will buy you some death sticks.
Afterwards, you will drop charges you pressed, go home, and rethink your lives.
Afterwards, we will drop any charges you pressed, go home, and rethink our lives.
Afterwards, we will drop any charges we pressed, go home, and rethink our lives.
And you will give us your weapons.
And we will give you our weapons.
And we will give you our weapons.
Huh. Guess we're really in touch with the Force.
I'm sick of all this Sanded Empire crap. I'm going to Naboo after this.
So with all that said, I'm the Lightning Ripper,
I'm StephanieSparda.
and in case I don't make a video until next month, I would like to take a moment to announce that I will be heading to Atlanta, Georgia for MomoCon, a game and anime convention that will feature a wide variety of YouTubers and voice actors you might recognize. I hope to see you there, but until then, all I can say is, thank you for watching. Oh, well, I do sell them here!